Hello friends, I'm George, the nice smelling gentleman. Welcome back to the channel guys, I hope that all of you are doing well. Today I'm going to talk about clone fragrances that are so good that are making chasing after the original scents that they have been inspired by, and paying full retail price pretty much redundant. And today I'm going to show you a total of 15 such fragrances. The first fragrance that I'm going to show you in today's video comes from the brand of Fomo and it's called Illusion Dswar. And this one has been very heavily inspired by MFK's Grand Soir. Now, this is an inspiration with a twist, not a direct clone. This feels like a slightly different take on the original DNA. In the opening, this feels quite different because it relies a lot on quite a lot of sweet fruity notes that are mixed in with some sugary notes, which is a bit different compared to the opening of the original fragrance from MFK. The dry down becomes pretty similar, but the opening is where this is different, the most compared to the original fragrance. It's very sweet, it has a lot of fruity sweetness, a lot of sugary sweetness. You also get some vanillic and amber sweetness just like with the original fragrance, and all around offers very nice quality. Also offers absolutely fantastic performance. This is a real monster when it comes to performance. It stays for a very long time on skin, it projects really hard, and it's a perfectly unisex fragrance in my opinion. The next one comes from the brand of ARA Prestige, and it's called Hypnotic Oud. Now, ARA Prestige is a sub-brand of My Perfumes. For those who don't know, this is their high-end line of fragrances, and this really feels with having really good quality. It's part of the Prestige line. There are other fragrances in this line like Hypnotic Amber, which is inspired by Qa'ed and Nishane Hashivat, but Hypnotic Oud has been very heavily inspired by the Fireplace from Maison Margiela, and I can pretty much call this one a clone. Not exactly a one-to-one clone, but very similar. It relies on pretty much the same notes like sugary sweetness, vanillic sweetness, woody notes, and of course incense notes, a nice amount of smoky notes. The way this differs a little bit compared to the original fragrance, at least to my nose, is by the amount of sweetness that this fragrance has. The incense note, the smoky note, is slightly toned out compared to the original fragrance, and the sweetness is a little bit ramped up. Other than that, this is very similar to the original fragrance. Offers absolutely fantastic performance, comes really luxuriously packaged. The next two scents that I'm going to show you both come from the brand of Paris Corner, and the first one is called Veteran Oud, and this one is very heavily inspired by Armani's Stronger With You Oud. A fragrance that sometimes can be pretty hard to find because I think it's a sort of a limited release that's more orientated towards the Middle Eastern markets and can be a bit pricey, especially here in Europe. But luckily enough, Paris Corner have done a really good job with Veteran Oud, which is very similar to the original one from Armani. Carries the very same scent profile that relies on a lot of sweet and warm notes, just like all of the members of the original Stronger With You line, with an added a nice and balanced amount of agar oud note, which adds a bit of a Middle Eastern touch. Feels really close to the original fragrance. The quality here of the scent is really nice. The price is pretty low all around, and probably the only slight drawback of this fragrance is that it's not like a super performer, but still offers pretty decent performance. I've been getting at least 7 hours of performance out of this fragrance. And the second Paris Corner fragrance that I'm going to show you in today's video is called Milano PR, and it comes from the Pandora Scents line, and this one is cloning or being heavily inspired by 1 Million Privé, a great original fragrance from Paco Rabanne, which unfortunately has been discontinued for quite a while. Now you can still find bottles of 1 Million Privé, but because that fragrance has been discontinued, prices can be pretty high. But luckily enough, again, Paris Corner have done a really nice job with Milano PR scent-wise. Very similar to the original fragrance. And it's one of those standout former members of the 1 Million line. It still has quite a lot of sweetness, but you have a nice amount of a tobacco note in here, nice amount of cinnamon spiciness, all around a very unique member of the 1 Million line, the scent itself, which unfortunately has been discontinued and probably was my most favorite member of the 1 Million line. But again, luckily enough, Paris Corner have done a great job with Milano PR. The next two fragrances come from the brand of Armaf, and the first one is called Club de Nuit Iconic, and this one is very heavily inspired by Bleu de Chanel EDP. Now, the original fragrance at this point, the prices of the Chanel fragrances have become so high that they pretty much have gone into niche territory price-wise. And that's really unfortunate, because the original scent, you know, Bleu de Chanel EDT, the EDP, the Parfum, they are really nice and versatile fragrances, but nowadays less and less people can actually afford to pay full retail price for those scents. And luckily enough, Armaf have done a really good job with Club de Nuit Iconic. It's not a one-to-one clone of Bleu de Chanel EDP, but carries very similar scent. It has a nice amount of citrusy freshness, you get some spices, you get a nice amount of ambery sweetness, and you also get those woodsy notes that give this one its sort of an, you know, reputation for being a super versatile fragrance, super likable fragrance that can be worn pretty much all year round. Quality is good, performance is really good. It's not the cheapest fragrance out there, but still, because of the current prices of Chanel fragrances, this still costs it like a third or a quarter of the price of the original. And the second Armaf fragrance that I'm going to show in today's video is my latest Armaf pickup, and it's called Takim Uomo Roso. And this one really surprised me a lot. I've been hearing good things about this fragrance for a while before I was finally able to get my hands on a bottle of this one, and I can say that I'm very happy with the end result. This fragrance is very heavily inspired by Paco Rabanne's Invictus Victory Elixir. Again, not a straight up clone, this feels like a slight twist, this feels like a slightly fresher take on the original DNA, but nonetheless the quality here is really good. It has a very similar scent that relies very heavily on those sweet notes like the original fragrance. It feels very modern, very sexy, very attractive fragrance that gets compliments, but again has just a slight sort of a fresh twist in the opening. Other than that, really nice. Offers very good performance, and the price is really low, very affordable. The next one comes from the brand of Maison Alhambra, and it's called Exclusive Tabac. And this one is inspired or cloning Carolina Herrera's Mystery Tobacco. The original fragrance is an absolutely fantastic tobacco-based scent that relies a lot on some sweet notes, and it's really nice for people who love tobacco-based fragrances. And it's a great fragrance, but the problem is that it comes from the Privé line of Carolina Herrera, and that makes it pretty expensive. Again, pretty much into the pricing of that original scent is in niche territory, but again, luckily enough, we have a great option that comes from Maison Alhambra. Maison Alhambra and Lattafa have done a fantastic job with you know, copying the original fragrance. Very similar to the original scent. Has a very nice, a very well blended scent that has a nice amount of tobacco, has a nice amount of sweetness. Absolutely fantastic fragrance all around, one of my most favorite Maison Alhambra fragrances. The next fragrance comes from the brand of Wataniah, and it's called Kayaan Classic, and this one is cloning Dior Homme Intense, one of my most favorite original designer fragrances of all time. I absolutely love the sweet, powdery, makeup-y, you know, scent profile of the original fragrance, and Wataniah have done a really good job you know, copying the original fragrance. To this day, I think this is the best Dior Homme Intense clone. Offers a very similar scent like the original fragrance. Has very strong iris note in here that feels lipsticky, feels you know, makeup-y. You get some of that sweet pear, you get some of the musk and the ouds on the dry down. All around very similar to the original fragrance. Maybe has a slight sort of a chocolatey cacao twist on the dry down, but other than that, very close to the original fragrance. The next three fragrances will be from the brand of Lattafa, and the first one is called Qa'ed Intense, and this one is very heavily inspired by Givenchy Gentleman Reserve Privé. Again, another sort of a twist on the original scent, not a direct clone. It still has a lot of that you know, notes that the original fragrance has, the ouds, the spices, the warm chestnut, maybe some tobacco and a bit of a boozy note, a lipsticky iris note. But the way that this differs compared to the original fragrance is maybe of the amount of powderness that you get out of this one compared to the original. This feels a little bit more powdery, a little bit more makeup-y, and has a bit of a reminiscence to something like Dior Homme Intense. Offers very nice quality, offers a very good performance, and the best thing out of all is that this can if you can find this, usually this tends to be very cheap. The next one comes from the Lattafa Pride line, and it's called Vintage Radio, and this one is very heavily inspired by Initio's Paragon. Offers a very similar scent to the original fragrance. You get that very sweet and juicy plum note, you get the nice amount of ouds that are when mixed with that juicy sweet plum note makes for a really good combination. You get some ouds, additional ouds, some spiciness, but all around this is a very nice, very uplifting and sweet scent. perfectly unisex in my opinion, offers a very good quality, comes uniquely packaged and in a unique bottle design, something that you don't see every day, offers very good performance, and all around I'm really a big fan of the original fragrance, and I'm a really huge fan of a vintage radio because this costs a fraction of the price of the original. And the last Lattafa fragrance that I'm going to feature in today's video is called Nashama Caprice. And this one is very heavily inspired by Lanoid Alone Blue Electric from YSL. Again, another sort of a twist, not a straight up clone, not a one-to-one clone. This carries a lot of the same notes, a lot of the same vibes like the original fragrance, you know, the aromatic notes, the woodsy notes, some of the spices, the lavender, some of that the ginger freshness that you get out of the original fragrance. But this feels a little bit more powdery, maybe a little bit more woody compared to the original scent. Feels slightly different, especially in the opening, but nonetheless, in the air smells very similar to Blue Electric. And the best thing out of all is that this outperforms Blue Electric without any problem when we talk about longevity on skin and when we talk about projection, especially the projection side of things. Nashama Caprice is actually, you know, projects a lot better compared to Blue Electric from YSL. And the last 4 scents that I'm going to show in today's video will all come from the brand of Fragrance World, and the first one is called Fero, and this one is very heavily inspired by Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue Forever. Smells very similar to the original fragrance, which I think at this point has been discontinued, so prices have steadily starting to rise up on the original one, and Fero actually is a really nice alternative to the original fragrance. Just keep in mind that you need to like the note of grapefruit in order to enjoy this one if you're not familiar with the original fragrance, but this relies very heavily on the slightly sour, slightly bitter note of grapefruit, especially in the opening. Some other citruses, you know, on the dry down you get some woods, some musk. It can be a bit sharp in the opening, but this is a great fragrance for the warmer months of the year, especially the summertime. Offers really good performance, in fact surprisingly good performance, and it's one of those rare occasions where, you know, Fragrance World have not straight up cloned the original fragrance when it comes to the bottle design. My next suggestion is for those of you who like sweet based fragrances with a strong boozy note, for those of you who are looking for an alternative to Kilian's Angel Share. And in my opinion, this is the best alternative, cheap alternative to Angel Share currently on the markets. It comes from French Avenue and it's called Royal Blend. It feels very similar to the original fragrance. You get that very sweet, slightly spicy scent profile that has a very strong cognac note, just like the original fragrance. And in fact, this might even have a little bit stronger, you know, boozy note, cognac note compared to the original scent. Perfectly unisex, very high quality, very competitively priced, very nicely packaged, and offers really good performance, almost beastly performing scent, pretty much on par with the original, maybe slightly less performance, but the price difference here is absolutely huge. My next suggestion again will be a clone of a original discontinued designer fragrance, just like Milano PR that I showed you earlier from Paris Corner. This one comes from Fragrance World and it's called Posh Mode. And probably judging by the name, you can already guess what this is cloning. This is a clone of Mugler's Pure Malt, and it's actually done very nicely. Now, Fragrance World have another clone that's called Starman Nebula, which is also not bad, but in my opinion, Posh Malt is better than that fragrance. So, again, Posh Mode has been discontinued for quite a while now. You can still find full bottles, but their prices tend to be very expensive, and Posh Mode is a really good alternative. Smells very similar to the original fragrance. You get that very dark, boozy, sexy scent profile that can be a bit challenging and smells quite unique. Performance is very good, overall quality is really nice, and the best thing again out of all is the fact that you can find this pretty much for a very cheap price. And my last suggestion in today's video comes again from FA Paris, French Avenue Paris, and it's called After Effect. And looking at the bottle and hearing the name, you can probably guess that this is cloning Side Effect from Initio, and it's a really good creation from you know, French Avenue. Very similar to the original fragrance, it relies again on the very same notes. You get the boozy note, you get the tobacco note, you get the spices, you get the sweetness of the original fragrance. Very similar, very dark, very sexy unisex fragrance that offers absolutely fantastic quality and absolutely fantastic performance. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the fragrances that I showed you in today's video, but still even at that price, it still costs a fraction of the price of the original fragrance. Comes really nicely packaged all around. This is one of my most favorite fragrance world scents and French Avenue scents. So guys, in today's video I tried to quickly show you 15 clone or inspired by fragrances that are so good that make chasing after the original scents and paying full retail price pretty much redundant. I hope that you found this video interesting or entertaining. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.